after the post-lunch session. So we have 3 lectures lined up. So we start with the first lecture by Professor Luis C. Branco from University Nova de Lisboa. Professor Branco graduated in chemistry from University of Lisbon in 1998 and then received his PhD in 2006 in organic and sustainable chemistry at FCT Nova. He is currently the principal researcher and invited professor at the FCT Nova, and his research interest focuses on the development of sustainable chemical processes and applied functional material, including task-specific ionic liquids and deep eutectic solvents. So with this, I would request Professor Luis to start your presentation. We will be having question answers after you finish the presentation. Yeah, Professor Luis.
Okay, thank you. Thank you first for your kind introduction and also for the kind invitation to be here and to present something in this webinar. For today, I would like to talk about development of eutectic systems for energy applications. And first, I would like to share with you this picture from our campus. This is the campus of Faculty of Science and Technology from New University of Lisbon. You can see the river, the Tagus River. In this side is Lisbon, is the capital of Portugal, and we are working. Our campus is in the other side of the river in Caparica. This is our campus, and here I mark the chemistry department of this campus where we are doing our work. And looking for this presentation, we are working in sustainable chemistry and in green solvents. And for that, in last years, we try to develop functional innovative salts for sustainability. And it's possible to consider a large list of green solvents. Here you can see mention some of that. In particular, water. Water is the first option of the renewable and no toxic green solvent. But in many cases, it's not possible to use water for applications. And it's possible to consider other alternatives like eco-friendly solvents, biosolvents from renewable resources, liquid polymers like polyethylene glycol, fluorinate solvents, and also supercritical fluids that it's a very interesting green solvent, no flammable and no toxic. And ionic liquids and eutectic mixtures can be also considered in this list. And for today, I would like to show you examples of applications using ionic liquids and how is possible to move some of that applications related with energy, replacing ionic liquids by eutectic mixtures, and in particular, deep eutectic solvents. And starting with a brief introduction, many of you know about ionic liquids. The general definition, they are organic salts that are liquids until 100 degrees Celsius, and they are formed by the adequate combination of organic cations with inorganic or organic anions. And it's possible to mention some relevant properties of ionic liquids. Here you can see in blue the almost negligible vapor pressure, the high thermal and chemical stability, the high ionic conductivity and large electrochemical window. These two properties can be important for some applications in energy, and also the no solubility in supercritical CO2. Supercritical CO2 that I mentioned before can be considered as a green solvent, and this combination of supercritical CO2 and ionic liquids can be very interesting because it's possible to use supercritical CO2 to remove selectively some compounds from ionic liquid media and not to remove ionic liquid. And this can be a clean and efficient extraction process. But the most important point that we are trying to take advantage is the possibility to tune some physical and structural properties of the ionic liquids that are dependent of the combination, the adequate combination of organic cations and anions. And according with that, we can create new functionalized materials. In last decades, it's possible to consider the evolution of the different generation of ionic liquids, initially as solvent, as alternative solvents to replace toxic organic solvents, and considering only the physical properties. Then a second generation combining chemical and physical properties and looking for advanced materials, and a third generation including pharmaceutical and biological properties. And in last years, we are working in these different generations because we already develop chiral ionic liquids based on biological molecules like amino acids and create bio-inspired ionic liquids for different applications, including in catalysis. Some functional materials, considering the combination of that smart materials and ionic liquids like photochromic, electrochromic, luminescent or magnetic ionic liquids, and more recent, the introduction of some active pharmaceutical drugs into the ionic liquid structure as cation or anion. But the list of possible application of ionic liquids is very, very large. And today, looking for this possible moving from ionic liquid and dipiothetic solvents, I would like to show you some examples how is in interest to apply ionic liquids and how is interest to replace, in some cases, by dipiothetic solvents. And I would like to show you examples in CO2 capture and conversion to fuels, as alternative lubricants, and also as electrolytes and electrochromism. And these are examples of applications related with energy. The dipiothetic solvents, many of you already see the definition. They are composed of 2 and 3 components capable of a self-association through hydrogen bond interactions. We need to combine hydrogen bond donors and hydrogen bond acceptors, and it's possible to classify dipiothetic solvents looking for these 4 types. And this is important to mention because in this presentation I can show you different classes of dipiothetic solvents. The type 1, metal salt plus organic salt. The type 2, metal salt hydrate plus organic salt. The type 3, organic salt and hydrogen bond donor. The most known example, the well-known example is choline chloride and urea. And the type 4, the metal salt hydrate and hydrogen bond donor. And the possibility to use some metals and chloride metals like zinc or cobalt that it's here mentioned, but also alkaline metals can be interest for some applications, and later I can show you that part. But it's possible to try dipiothetic solvents by trial and error and considering some advantage comparing with ionic liquids, like the low price, the biodegradability, the biocompatibility, and also it's easy to synthesize and purify. But this depends the combinations, like in the case of ionic liquids. In the ionic liquids, depends the suitable combination between organic cations and anions, and in the case of dipiothetic solvents, the adequate combination between hydrogen bond acceptors and donors. And the list of applications, it's also relatively large. And here is mentioned some of the applications. I would like to show you the applications of dipiothetic solvents as solvents for extraction and separation, in particular in desulfurization of fuels, and also as electrolytes and related with electrochromism, and how it's possible to move from ionic liquids to dipiothetic solvents. Let's start from carbon dioxide capture and conversion to valuable products. And in this topic, this is a very important topic nowadays. Ionic liquids are very relevant, and it's very interesting to apply ionic liquids in this context. Our idea, and the idea of many people working in CO2 capture processes and then utilization, is to consider this CO2 utilization cycle. This means trying to capture CO2 from the atmosphere using an efficient process, and then the further utilization and production of a specific product that can be used as a valuable product, for example, fuels, and this is like a cycle, is the CO2 utilization cycle. And we know that CO2 is a no polar and stable molecule, is no toxic, no corrosive, no flammable, but in the present environmental and energetic context framework, the CO2 capture is highly required, and the carbon capture and storage, the CCS or sequestration, and also the CCU, the carbon capture and utilization, are two very important methods that can mitigate the CO2 emission problem and the global warming. In this context, some years ago, Jessop and co-workers published in Nature in 2005, this was 50 years ago, a very interesting concept of the reversible ionic liquids and salts. They show that it's possible to combine an organic superbase, and in particular DBU, and combine DBU that you can see here in this reaction, the DBU. It's possible to combine with an alcohol that can act as a nucleophile, and in the presence of CO2, it's possible to obtain a reversible carbonate. Base ionic liquids is a reversible salt, and it's possible to use this reversible system to capture and to store highly pure CO2. Looking for this, we try to use this similar idea, but using amines instead alcohols. This means reversible carbamate base ionic liquids. In this case, we are considering amines, different kind of amines, primary amines, aromatic amines, D and 3 amines, in the presence of organic superbase like DBU or tetramethylguanidine, and in the presence of CO2, it's possible to prepare these reversible carbamate salts. And by air, by the presence of air, this is reversible. We prove that the tetramethylguanidine base ionic liquids are more reversible than DBU, and it's possible to tune these properties and prepare reversible salts and capture at the same time CO2. But if it's possible to use amines, it's also possible to use amino acids. And we try to explore with different kinds of amino acids, like alanine, valine, leucine, phenylalanine, tryptophan, and others, again in the presence of DBU and tetramethylguanidine, using two equivalents of the organic superbase, because here we have a carboxylic acid and an amine. We need two equivalents in order to prepare these reversible carbamates in the presence of CO2. These carbamates are inspired in natural sources. They are chiral, and it's interest again to capture CO2. Then we try to move to alcohols, but to saccharides. And saccharides are very interesting because we have multiple hydroxyl groups, and we can take advantage of that. We try to test with glucose, mannose, mannitol, alginic acid, and beta-cyclodextrin, and in all of the cases, it's possible to prepare reversible polycarbonates using DBU or tetramethylguanidine as organic superbase. And here we can consider the number of hydroxyl groups and the percentage of CO2 that it's possible to capture is higher. And we compare the industrial process. The industrial process uses ethanolamine, 30% in eco solution. This is a corrosive solution, and the best result reported normally in the literature is around 7% of CO2 uptake. Our best approach until now is around 40% of CO2 uptake, using a very simple combination, the D-mannose and DBU without solvent. And this is something that we are trying to explore in more detail. But looking for these results, we try to check cellulose, because cellulose is abundant, is natural, and it's interest to combine in this kind of approach. And we try to combine cellulose and tetramethylguanidine. In the presence of CO2, we observe the formation of a novel and stable gel of cellulose, and this is interest for CO2 capture, but also for cellulose processing applications. But in this context of the sustainable CO2 capture process, we already check other approach, like using metal organic frameworks, the MOFs, in combination with ionic liquids. And this kind of combination is interesting because it's possible to incorporate in membranes, in particular in this Matrimid membrane, and form like a matrix membrane. And this is very interesting for the CO2 nitrogen permeability and selectivity. It's possible to separate very well CO2 from nitrogen. And we are using only 2% of ionic liquid MOF loading. It's a very small quantity of ionic liquid and MOF, and we can obtain a very high selectivity for CO2. And this was the cover picture that you can see here in Energy Technology in 2017 related with this approach. This means it's well known that ionic liquids are very interesting to combine with CO2 for solubility, for adsorption, for different kind of applications, but it's also interest for CO2 conversion. It's possible to use ionic liquid for CO2 conversion to other products, including fuels. We already proved the conversion of CO2 to cyclic carbonates, and for that we are using ionic liquid, different kind of ionic liquid as a catalyst, combining with CO2 in the presence of epoxide. It's possible to consider like a biphasic system. This is an efficient catalytic process to obtain cyclic carbonates, and cyclic carbonates can be interesting as precursor fuels or some starting materials that can be interesting for energy applications. But it's also possible to use ionic liquids for the formation of methane and methanol. The efficient transformation of carbon dioxide into fuels, like methane or methanol, this is an excellent alternative to sequestration, in particular in methanation reaction, that it's the Sabatier reaction that you can see here, CO2 to hydrogen to form methane and water. And some years ago, we proved that it's possible to do the hydrogenation CO2 reaction to methane using routine nanoparticles in ionic liquid media. And how is working this approach? We are using a ruthenium precursor, in particular a ruthenium catalyst. This ruthenium called methylallyl. This is a ruthenium 2 compound. It's commercially available, and we combine this with an ionic liquid, with an hydrophobic ionic liquid. This is an homogeneous solution in the beginning, and then we have the formation of ruthenium nanoparticles in situ during the reaction. It means we have two immiscible phase systems, the gas and ionic liquid phase. The supercritical CO2 that I mentioned in the beginning, we can combine with ionic liquid because now supercritical CO2 can solubilize ionic liquid and facilitate hydrogen dissolution. Ionic liquid does not dissolve in gas phase. We can have the formation of ruthenium 0 nanoparticles in situ, and this is crucial to form methane. We try to optimize the reaction conditions for different points, like the quantity of precursor, the pressure of hydrogen and CO2, the reaction time, the temperature, and we obtain the best conditions using 150 degrees Celsius, 24 hours of reaction, 80 bar of pressure of hydrogen and CO2, and using an hydrophobic ionic liquid, this C8-MIM, octylmethylimidazole and bisphosphonate, only 0.24 mole %, a small quantity, and this is enough for the reaction. And we obtain 69% of yield of methane. And here you can see before and after, before in the beginning of the reaction and after the formation of the nanoparticles, the routine nanoparticles in situ, and we prove by TEM the size of these routine nanoparticles is around 2.5 nanometers. This is a very important point because in the literature, this is the first example for the formation of methane by hydrogenation of CO2 using only 150 degrees Celsius. Normally is require higher temperatures and higher pressures. And the metal nanoparticle formation in ionic liquid is well known. the formation and stabilization. This was proved by many groups, including Jairton Dupont and Janiak and other groups. And they proved that the active metal nanoparticles form and stabilize in imidazole in ionic liquids. And after that, we tried to check the effect of ionic liquid in this reaction. The effect of ionic liquid cation, the size of alkyl chain is crucial. C8 is better than C4 because we have a higher CO2 solubility in ionic liquid and a higher routine nanoparticle stability. But also the effect of an additional methyl group on position 2 here in imidazole cation, a methyl group here in the position 2 between the two nitrogen, the C4 DMIM comparing with C4 MIM is better because we can avoid the formation of carbines. But the effect of ionic liquid anion is very important for this. Why? Because we need to use hydrophobic anions, fluorinate anions, and the ionic liquid anion affect greatly the reaction behavior. We prove that the best anion for this is this sulfonate fluorinate anion, and we obtain 88% of yield using this system, this ionic liquid. This anion is named nonaflate, and it is the best ionic liquid for the reaction. Then we prove that it's possible to recycle, and this is an important point in catalysis, an important point to use ionic liquids, and we prove the recyclability of this ionic liquid and ruthenium zero nanoparticle system. After 5 cycles, we observe a reduction of 50% of the catalytic efficiency without treatment between runs. And the reason for this reduction is the water accumulation in the system and also the possible routine nanoparticles agglomeration. And now we are trying to change this recycling part, trying to use like a continuous process. And if we use like in a continuous process, it's possible to avoid this and to recycle in a good way these ionic liquid and ruthenium zero nanoparticle systems. In some cases, no methane was observed, like using mesylate, trifluoroacetate, or dicyanamide anions. In the 2 first cases, only CO. In the last case, no reaction because no formation of routine nanoparticles. This means it's possible to perform nanocatalysis in ionic liquids, and in particular CO2 hydrogenation to methane. And in this case, we are using imidazole as cations, different kind of anions, fluorinate anions. This is crucial for the methane formation, and nonaflate is the best. The stabilization of the metal nanoparticles and the reduction of metals is facilitated by the task-specific ionic liquids and determine the final product. Okay, in this part, I already show you carbon dioxide capture and sequestration, the reversible concept using organic superbase in the presence of amines, amino acids, saccharides. It's possible to use a bioinspired approach, a competitive process using dimanose and DBU and cellulose gels incorporating CO2, but it's also possible to combine metal organic frameworks and ionic liquids for that. And then it's possible to convert the CO2 into fuels. And this is in the presence again of ionic liquids, fluorinate ionic liquid media for the preparation of routine nanoparticles in situ. But it's possible to move from other metals, not only ruthenium. And if we use other metals like copper, nickel, zinc, it's possible to obtain other products, not methane, but other possible fuels. And it's also possible to apply photo and electron reduction of CO2. We are involved in a project, in a European project named Sun Storage Project, and the idea is to develop a direct and efficient conversion sunlight into storable chemical and electrochemical fuels. We are using in solar cells, in dye sensitizer solar cells, in batteries like redox flow batteries, and also in solar photoelectron reduction of CO2. And for that, we are using different kind of task-specific ionic liquids. But the point now, it's possible to replace ionic liquids by dipiothetic solvents. This is interesting because we have a lot of information from ionic liquids, and we can check and we can compare if we are using dipiothetic solvents, which kind of advantage that we can consider. And how is possible to explore this work combining with photo and electricity, because this interest to use light and to use electricity for the reduction of CO2 to fuels. This is something that we are trying to do. Many of the parts that I already show was done by Catarina Melo during the PhD and thesis. And in this sun storage project, we already proved with some collaborators that the electrochemical production of syngas from CO2 is possible. And this is something that we are trying to explore. But moving from ionic liquids to dipiothetic solvents, how is possible to do? Dipiothetic solvents for CO2 capture is already proved in the literature. You can see two different articles. Choi and co-workers in 2016 proved that it's possible dipiothetic solvent media for CO2 capture. This is relatively inspired in the reversible ionic liquid systems that I showed you before. In this case, they are using a dipiothetic solvent and a combination of a protonatamine chloride, a salt, and diamine. And in the presence of CO2, this is reversible. It's possible to capture CO2 and to remove again CO2 from the system. Another article, more recent, in 2020, in this year, from Ren and co-workers, and they proved the hydrophobic functional dipiothetic solvents used for efficient and reversible capture of CO2. Here, they are using hydrophobic functional dipiothetic solvent and CO2 for the purification of flue gas by chemical and physical absorption. And this is clear that it's possible to use dipiothetic solvents for CO2 capture and sequestration. Now the point is it possible to use dipiothetic solvents for CO2 conversion in fuels, like in methanation reaction, using a similar approach to ionic liquid system? We already proved that it's possible to produce the metal nanoparticles in dipiothetic solvents. Now it's important to prove that it's possible to use high temperature and pressures in order to do some reactions. And this is a work in progress, and I hope to show you results very soon about this topic. But the fuels that we are looking for, it's important also to clean some commercial fuels like gasoline or diesel. And yesterday, Professor Isabel Marrucho showed the sulfur clean fuels using dipiothetic solvents. This is a work done by Filipa Lima in her PhD thesis, and this is a collaboration between Professor Isabel Marrucho and myself, and we try to check how it's possible to apply dipiothetic solvents in these systems. The deep desulfurization is nowadays mandatory. It's crucial to reduce the sulfur limits, and in particular these kind of compounds that it's crucial to remove from fuels. And here you can see the deep desulfurization process, many options, the hydrodesulfurization, some catalytic, but also extractive. And in 2016, you can see the limits, and in green is 0 to 10 ppm as the limit. And if we move from 2016 to 2020, you can see the green coloration in the world map, and this also in the diesel. And this is a crucial point. Now it's crucial to remove sulfur from fuels, from gasoline and diesel. Ionic liquids are interest, but also dipiothetic solvents. Many people already prove ionic liquids as a good media for that, and we try to explore dipiothetic solvents. In the beginning, trying to use dipiothetic solvents based on polyethylene glycol, and we tried the deep extraction of thiophene and dibenzothiophene, two model compounds from fuel, and try to check the sulfur clean fuel. And we prove using 60 different hypothetic solvents based on polyethylene glycol and its precursors that it's possible to extract and to apply an extractive desulfurization of the model fuel containing these two components, dibenzothiophene and thiophene. And it's possible to reduce the sulfur content of fuels below the environment regulation, 10 ppm. This means hypothetic solvents can be very attractive, and the extraction performance and cycles using hypothetic solvents, it's here clear. And after some cycles, it's possible to remove completely this kind of contaminants. Then we try a combination of desulfurization and denitrogenation of the fuels. If we can remove at the same time sulfur components and nitrogen components from the fuels. And this is also possible using hypothetic solvents. In this case, we test 4 different hypothetic solvents, and we prove the concurrent removal of both nitrogen and sulfur containing compounds, and using heptane as a simulate gasoline and diesel fuels. The mixture containing thiophene, dibenzothiophene, pyridine, and carbazoles, and we test the simultaneous extractive desulfurization and extractive denitrogenation. And here you can see some results of the extraction efficiency. The best example using a hypothetic solvent composed by the tetrabuthylammonium chloride, a salt, and sulfolane, and this kind of combination are very interesting for the extraction. And here you can compare with PEG, polyethylene glycol, and sulfolane alone, that it's the blue one and the orange, and we have very interesting results for this concurrent desulfurization and denitrogenation. Now the point is, are hypothetic solvents a sustainable solution for that? And this is something that we need to answer. They are green, they are no toxic and biodegradable, they are enough cheap and easy to produce and to apply in industry for this kind of application. This is something that Filipe Lima tried to answer during the PhD thesis, and we are trying to complete with other studies. But here you can see the comparison between the single and the simultaneous removal of nitrogen and sulfur compounds from N-heptane, and from some cases it's interest to do this kind of application, and this is something that we are interested to explore in more detail, the application of hypothetic solvents in desulfurization of fuels. Another topic related with energy is the possibility to use ionic liquids and hypothetic solvents as alternative lubricants. This is a very interesting point in the literature. The first article in this topic was published in 2001, and Liu and co-workers prove that room temperature ionic liquids as a novel versatile lubricant for steel-steel contacts. It's very important in some nanotribological applications and in mechanical engineering to develop efficient lubricants for some applications. And ionic liquids are very attractive for some of that applications. And in last years, we show the versatility of ionic liquids for that. In 2050, using steel-steel contacts, using pure ionic liquids, and we apply novel ionic liquids for the interfacial and tribological applications. Then in 2016, we move from silicon contacts. This is a very huge area because silicon is crucial for many materials, and this is the nano electromechanical, these NEMs and MEMS, and this is a very important area in mechanical engineering. And we prove that the task-specific ionic liquids based on sulfur are very interesting for tribological applications. And more recent, in 3 years ago, we use ionic liquids only as additives, because looking for the price and the possibility to consider a large scale up of this technology, we can prove that it's possible to use a small quantity of ionic liquids as an additive, in particular imidazolium-based ionic liquids, and this is useful for nano-lubrication of silicon surfaces. What we are doing, we are testing the tribological in collaboration with other groups, the tribological properties. We synthesize different kind of ionic liquids and then apply in a nanotribometer. And we compare the PEG, the polyethylene glycol, that is the base oil, in the presence of ionic liquid as an additive, only 2% in weight, and we check the coefficient of friction values by Strebeck curves. And this coefficient of friction, the variation is here indicate according a limit lubrication, like a elasto-hydrodynamic lubrication or hydrodynamic lubrication. And this behavior, it's possible to observe using this kind of studies. And we prove using imidazolium cations and picolinium cations that a small amount of ionic liquid, only 2%, add to polyethylene glycol, is significantly reduce the coefficient of friction of the lubricant, and this is very attractive for this kind of applications. And we recently, in 2020, this year, we already published the picolinium-based hydrophobic ionic liquids, these methylpyridinium cations, as additives to polyethylene glycol, PEG 200, to lubricate steel silicon contacts. This was done in the PhD thesis of Mariana Donato, and also it's possible to improve the lubrication of silicon surface using ionic liquids as oil additives. And here it's important to consider sulfur anions. This is a particular interest observation. If we are using a sulfur anion like triflate, trifluoromethanol sulfonate, we can improve this kind of application. Why? Because the sulfur anion can interact with the silicon surface, and in particular it's possible to consider like a film, and this is very important for the lubrication process. And again, our question is, okay, we already proved that ionic liquids are very interesting for application as lubricants. It's possible to apply dipyotetic solvents instead ionic liquids, and the answer is yes, it's possible, and it's very interesting to apply dipyotetic solvents based on sulfur, again taking advantage of the information from ionic liquid field as alternative lubricants for silicon surface. This was published last year. We developed dipyotetic solvents containing sulfur, in particular sulfolane and camphor sulfonic acid as an ion in the salt, and polyethylene glycol. This means we have a salt that can be an ionic liquid and polyethylene glycol in a specific combination. It's possible to prepare a dipyotetic solvent, and this is a good lubricant for silicon surfaces. All dipyotetic solvents are moderately viscous and prevent wear of silicon in tribological tests, and the best one are these two here mentioned, and imidazolium salt with camphor sulfonic acid, and this is the salt in combination with polyethylene glycol, and a picolinium, methylpyridinium, with methyl sulfate anion with PEG. They are excellent lubricants for silicon, and it's possible to use as pure. And this is something that now we are exploring, other eutectic systems, some natural eutectic systems, hydrophobic eutectic systems, if they are interested for application as lubricants. Again, I show you examples how it's possible to moving from ionic liquids to deep eutectic solvents. And this is also possible in electrochromism, electrolytes, and energy applications. We know about the applications of ionic liquids in energy. some articles like this chemical review in 2017, other articles show the application of ionic liquids in fuel cells, in batteries, as electrolytes, in solar cells, and in other areas. And some years ago, we tried to start applications of ionic liquids in electrochromism. Electrochromic materials that are very interesting and that they can be interest for energy applications. Electrochromic materials, they are what? They are a basis of a variety of devices for information displays, smart windows, and the electrochromic materials, we have materials that can change color, the coloration, by the application of electricity. And to fabricate this kind of materials, we need electrochromic devices. This is dependent on conducting surfaces, electrochromic compounds, and electrolytes. Here you can see how it's possible to design an electrochromic device. We need an electrolyte, an efficient electrolyte, an electrode, and electrochromic layer. What was our motivation? The use of ionic liquid that can play the role of both. It means ionic liquids can play simultaneously as electrochrom and electrolyte. They can act at the same time, and we can avoid the use of other electrolytes. And we try to prove that using Viology derivatives. This is a well-known electrochromic material. This is a dication, bipyridinium salt is the most stable and colorless species, and we can obtain the radical cation, intensely colored, and the neutral compound. And it's possible to switch between these different species and at the same time to change the coloration. We are more focused in dication and radical cation as a reversible system. And in the beginning, we tried to develop different kinds of electrochromic ionic liquids using bipyridinium salts with symmetric dication, no symmetric dication, different functional groups, and also different anions. And this was a variety of systems, and we prove in many of the cases that it's working well. It's possible also to use oxo-bipyridinium salts. For example, if we are using here oxo substituents, and the type of the substituent from this bipyridinium cation and the counterion influence the reversibility and the switch of colors of these electrochromic systems. But it's possible as suitable ionic electrochromic devices, and it's possible to change the coloration. Normally, using the conventional bipyridinium systems, the change is between transparent to blue color. And here it's possible to change the coloration, and this can be interest for different applications. More recent, we try another approach using a linker between two bipyridinium, and it's possible to extend this system and using a poly bipyridinium systems combining with iodide or bisphosphonate as anions, and here you can see a variation of colors, and it's also possible to recycle, to show the cycling. It means the switch between dication and radical cation, between this transparent to violet color, and we prove that it's possible to check more than 8,000 redox cycles, and we have around 77% of the reduction, 77% of the initial coloration. This is a very stable system for the electrochromic devices, and this is very interesting for applications in material science. And if we are moving again to eutectic systems, it's possible to use eutectic systems in energy. And in 2017, we proved that deep eutectic solvents can be interesting as green electrolytes. It means if we can replace the ionic liquids that I showed you before by deep eutectic solvents. And now we are using different hydrogen bond acceptors, normally salts, sodium or lithium, with triflate or bisulfamide or acetate, and using hydrogen bond donors like polyethylenoglycol, ethylenoglycol, glycerol, or propylene carbonates. And these kind of combinations are useful as dipiothetic solvents, as green electrolytes for electrochromic devices. It means we are using different kind of systems, low cost and green electrolytes for electrochromic devices. For example, choline chloride and ethylenoglycol, 1 pair 2. This is a viscous liquid with, here you can see the density, the conductivity, and the electrochemical window, and also lithium chloride and ethylenoglycol, and it's relatively large, the electrochemical window. And this is very interesting because we can apply these dipiothetic solvents as electrolytes in the presence of electrochemical and electrochromic probes like bipyridinium salts, but also ferrocene or other systems, and this works very well as alternative electrolytes. After that, here you can see that it's possible to change the chlorations. It's possible to check different kind of approach in electrochromism, and the dipiothetic solvents containing ethylenoglycol as green electrolytes are very promising for this kind of application in reversible electrochromic devices. After that, we try to use dipiothetic solvents only based in lithium and sodium salts. This was the first examples of dipiothetic solvents with no halogenate hydrogen bond acceptors. And we try this kind of combinations, 9 new dipiothetic solvents, like lithium acetate, lithium triflate, lithium bisulfamide, in combination with glycerol or ethylenoglycol or polyethylenoglycol in some cases. And this is, again, very promising as electrolytes, not only for electrochromism, but other kind of devices. We proved the coloration gradient in these cases. Now we are using a dipiothetic solvent as electrolyte and an imidazolium and a bipyridinium, salt, iodide salt as probe. This means a combination of an ionic liquid that I showed you before and a dipiothetic solvent. And this kind of combination, it's very useful, high coloration contrast and efficiency. And we prove in a preliminary redox cycling that it's possible to obtain a reversible system at least 1,400 cycles. And it's possible to combine now dipiothetic solvents, ionic liquids, different kind of systems for electrochromic devices. But it's possible to prepare intrinsically electrochromic dipiothetic solvents. This means not only as electrolyte, but also as electrochrome, as we already proved for ionic liquids. And we developed 12 new intrinsically electrochromic dipiothetic solvents in different combinations, and these are based on Violagene derivatives in combination with ethylenoglycol, glycerol, and polyethylenoglycol, and they works as intrinsically electrochromic dipiothetic solvents. I can show you here a system. This is an electrochromic devices, and we can check if this is working. Sorry, only to put this moving. And after a few seconds, it's possible to change to yellow. Probably it's not working in the full presentation. I can show you here. You can see the change in the coloration to blue one, and then to yellow.
Your screen is not visible.
It's not visible?
Yeah, you are visible, the screen is not there. So maybe you can...
Sorry. We can check now. Now it's working. Okay, sorry about that. Now it's working. You can see this is the electrochromic devices using a dipiothetic solvent, and an intrinsically electrochromic system, and now it's changing. Okay.
Yeah, no. Can you please share the screen? The screen sharing is
sorry. Now it's sharing? Yeah?
No. Yes. You can play from here only. Yes. You can play the video.
Now it's okay, yeah?
Yes.
Yes, but the video is not running.
Yeah.
And now it's okay. Yes. Now you can play.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, you can see. Sorry about that. This is a video and sometimes it is not working well, but now you can see it's very fast and it's like between yellow to violet, and we can play this many times. This is an electrochromic device using a dipiothetic solvent in the system. Okay, and looking for this kind of applications, dipiothetic solvents are very interesting for electrochromism, but also for other energy applications. And recently, and this is very recent work, we develop alkaline iodide dipiothetic solvents, in particular using hydrogen bond acceptors, lithium iodide, sodium iodide, potassium iodide, in combination with hydrogen bond donors like glycerol, ethylenoglycol, and polyethylenoglycol. And these dipiothetic solvents are very promissory dipiothetic solvents as electrolytes. They are very interesting for electrochromic devices, but also for other applications like solar cells, and this is something that we are working now. And this was published very recent in ACS Sustainable Chemistry and Engineering. And now, and this is the picture, the cover picture of this number. And here you can see the lithium iodide and this kind of alkaline iodide dipiothetic solvents are particularly relevant for future applications, and we are interested to apply in other kind of devices. This was a work mainly developed by Dr. Hugo Cruz, that it's working in this topic in dipiothetic solvents and in particular for electrochemical applications. And this is something that we are trying to explore using other kind of systems, and this is very promising. And I would like to share with you this very recent application. Okay, looking for the time, it's almost in the hand, and I would like to conclude this part with an important mention, an important message. Sorry. The point is, I show you different examples of ionic liquids and our work in ionic liquid field related with energy, with lubricants, with CO2 capture and conversion, and how is possible in many cases to move to eutectic mixers and dipiothetic solvents. And this is possible, and we can take advantage of some information and knowledge from ionic liquid field and move to eutectic mixers. And sometimes this is relevant if we are looking for scale up, if we are looking for some drawbacks from ionic liquids like the coast or other points, and it's possible to do that that transformation. And it's possible to compare, and in some cases it's possible to combine, like in electrochromism, because it's possible to use an electrochromic ionic liquid in combination with an eutectic solvent as an electrolyte. And this is very interesting for different applications. I show you some contributions for the sustainable goals from Agenda 2030. I show you these three specific points: the CO2 valorization related with the number 30, the climate action, and the examples of CO2 capture and conversion to fuels. This is something that we are looking now in dipiothetic solvents. I show you sustainable process and functional materials, that it's the number 11, related with sustainable cities and communities. I show you desulfurization of fuels using dipyrotic solvents, and also alternative lubricants using ionic liquids and more recent dipyrotic solvents. And finally, in energy, alternative electrolytes and electrochromic devices. It's very important, this goal number 7, the affordable and clean energy. And we are really motivated that this kind of dipyrotic solvents can be very interesting as alternative electrolytes for batteries, for fuel cells, for solar cells, for other kind of devices, but also for electrochromism. And we already prove some of that points, and it's something that it's in progress. Finally, I would like to show you a Portuguese company named Solquemar that commercialize different kind of ionic liquids and dipyrotic solvents, and trying to do like that match between ionic liquids and dipyrotic solvents. Is available up to 150 ionic liquids and dipyrotic solvents, different kind of structures like imidazolium, guanidinium, pyridinium, ammonium, different kind of anions. Also, this kind of combination, you can see ionic liquids and dipyrotic solvents, and always possible to combine and develop some task-specific systems and also other kind of products. And the idea from Solquemar is to consider like a research partner in smart fluids, in chemicals, in energy, in other applications. And for any contact, you can see here the email address, and you can contact directly the company. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the different collaborators in this work. In particular, I mention here the most important names in these different parts. I show you 4 parts, the CO2 capture and conversion, and I'd like to emphasize the work of Catarina Melo and the PhD of Catarina Melo in this topic, and also Dr. Gonçalo Carrera in the case of CO2 capture. The desulfurization process using dipyrotic solvents, the work of Filipe Lima during the PhD in collaboration with Professor Isabel Marrucho in Technical University. The alternative lubricants, the work of Mariana Donato in collaboration with Professor Benilde Saramago and Rogério Colasso in Technical University. And now we are using alternative lubricants as ionic liquids and dipyrotic solvents. And finally, electrolytes and electrochromism, this final part that I mentioned. And in particular, I would like to thank Dr. Hugo Cruz, because many of these results are related with the work of Dr. Hugo Cruz. Also, Dr. Noemi Jordão, in the case of electrochromic ionic liquids, and Professor Fernando Pina, Professor Madalena Dionísio, and Adélio Mendes, some collaborators in these parts of the work. Finally, I would like to thank the different projects, the funding from the different sources, and of course, finally, I would like to thank your kind attention, and I'm completely available for questions and for any specific question that you have from this work. Thank you for your kind attention.
Hello. Thank you, Professor Branco. So let's open this stage for some questions from audience. If anyone has any question, you can raise your hand. Yeah, Professor Ankireti Katha, you can ask your question.
Yeah. Hi, this is Anki. Thank you so much, Professor, for your excellent talk. So you have really taken us journey from CO2 capture to the electrochemical storage and all that stuff. I have one basic question is from my side. It's bothering me recently is that we have been seeing this lithium-ion batteries in electric vehicles for the several maybe years. So even then people often complain that liquid electrolytes or maybe organic solvents have some kind of issues which needs to be resolved. So what is your opinion on the replacing these organic solvent-based electrolytes with the deep eutectic solvents? Does any project has seen the commercial success as of now? If not seen, what can we do to make a deep eutectic solvents as an alternative of an organic solvent in the lithium-ion battery?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your question. And it means we are looking for different kind of devices, and also we are looking for, in the case of batteries, we have some experience in the case of ionic liquids, because this was the beginning of the story, and we are using some task-specific ionic liquids as a good media to replace some organic solvents in some kind of applications, in particular in sun storage project that I show you in the presentation. This is an European project that we have different tasks. One of the tasks is related with batteries, with vanadium redox flow batteries, and we are trying to test the possibility to replace the conventional organic media in that kind of batteries by ionic liquids and deep eutectic solvents. In the case of deep eutectic solvents, I think the point is to check the best combination between hydrogen bond donors and acceptors. Looking for our experience, it's important to take account the viscosity of the system and the stability. These are two very important points. The electrochemical stability, if you are considering electrochemical applications, and the thermal stability. Because in some of these devices, you need to consider a temperature higher than the room temperature. And it's important to consider the stability, chemical and thermal stability, and also the viscosity. But I think some deep eutectic solvents with ethylene glycol, with polyethylene glycol, it means the same kind of approach that we are doing with electrochromic devices as electrolytes can be useful to apply in other kind of devices and can be a good first choice for the applications.
Okay, so that means that ionic conductivity in the deep eutectic solvents or ionic liquids which you have investigated is as good as you see in the organic solvents?
Yeah, this depends the combination, but in some cases it's possible to, it means to compare and to have similar and even better results.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So we have another questions. Mr. Indrajit Das, can you introduce yourself and ask the questions? Yeah, Mr. Indrajit Das. You just unmute your microphone.
Yeah. Yeah, Indrajit Das, can you unmute yourself? You ask the question?
Yeah. Hello, sir. Myself Indrajit Das from IIT Madras. Yeah. My basic question is, like how you are measuring toxicity of ionic liquids?
The toxicity?
Yeah, toxicity of ionic liquids or deep eutectic system, like how we can measure experimentally.
It means this depends the kind of application, but it's possible to evaluate the toxicity in different ways. In the case of ionic liquids and also in the case of deep eutectic solvents, it's possible to check the toxicity, for example, in different cells, in human cells, if you are considering application related with pharmaceutical or biological systems. In this kind of applications, we are more interested to check the toxicity and biodegradability. And for that, we are using some model, for example, fish, for example, the toxicity in water, that it's an important point in some cases. But the process or the method for the check the toxicity is relatively optimized in the literature, and you can find different publications and different studies related with the toxicity. Of course, the toxicity, and when people consider ionic liquids or dipiothetic solvent, can be toxic or non-toxic. This depends the combination. If you are using biocompatible or no toxic cations and anions in the case of ionic liquids, you have a good chance to obtain in the hand a no toxic and biocompatible ionic liquid. And the same in the case of dipiothetic solvents. You need to select a hydrogen bond donor receptor according with that. And I think this is the first point. You need in the beginning to do a combination that can avoid a high toxicity in the hand. Then you can prove about the toxicity, and you have different models and different studies available to check about the toxicity.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Okay, Professor Branco, I just have one small question. So you have told that this using ionic liquid, frictional coefficient can be reduced, right?
Sorry, you can repeat.
Yeah, using ionic liquid, friction coefficient can be reduced, right?
Yeah.
So if someone want to design some lubricant for a specific surface other than say silicone wafer, what should be the objective of designing this ionic liquid?
Okay. We start this story related with lubricants using steel contacts, because the steel contacts are the most common one. And then, like I show you, we discover, in the case of silicon, we discover this interaction between sulfur and silicon surface. This was the reason why we develop and design ionic liquids considering sulfur into the anion. I think it's important in all of the studies that we already done, the viscosity of the ionic liquid is a crucial point, because you need to check the influence of the viscosity into the system. For us now, it's more interest to develop alternative lubricants, combining a conventional lubricant and ionic liquid as additive or dipiothetic solvent. But I think the interest point in the case of ionic liquid is to use as additive. Why? Because you can reduce the quantity a lot, and using a small amount of ionic liquid, only 2% in some cases, in 2% in weight, you can obtain very good results. For example, if you add ionic liquids to polyethylene glycol or other model lubricants, you have a significant improvement in the lubrication. And we have something similar in the case of dipiothetic solvents. In that case, you need to develop your dipiothetic solvent, including polyethylene glycol or ethylene glycol in the structure. But the most important point is if you understand the interaction with the surface, this depends the type of surface, and also the viscosity, because the viscosity is crucial for the interaction and for the efficiency of the ionic liquid or dipiothetic solvent as lubricant.
Okay, thank you, Professor Branco. I guess there is no other questions. So we thank you once again for this insightful talk.
Thank you.
Let's go to the next section of our webinar. Our next talk will be delivered by Professor Mara Pereira and her student Sonia Pedro from University of Aveiro, Portugal. The topic of this talk will be eutectic solvent comprising antibiotics, a breakthrough in topical treatment.
So
Hello.
yes, you can hear me. Can I share my screen?
Yes. Yeah. So before starting, let me introduce Professor